Well, everyone, thank you very much for joining us on this on stage podcast. We have a special guest here, Robert LaSardo, who you know in several movies for the last 20 some odd years. Um, he's a Brooklyn native, and he began his career studying at the High School of Performing Arts in New York City before going on to the Stella Adler Studio of Acting and spent 4 years in the U.S. Navy. And we're so happy that he's here on our platform. Miss LaSardo, you want to give us a little bit of a breakdown of who you are and when you started acting and why?
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you for having me on the show, Chris.
You're very welcome, my friend. Anytime.
Yeah, I appreciate that we can make time to talk about these sort of things. You know, let's see the genesis of this guy. Um,
One moment, I forgot. It was kind of rude of me to keep the TV on because I know that the mic is pretty. Okay, sorry. Okay, the genesis of this guy. Go ahead.
the genesis of this guy. Let's see. That's correct. I was born in Brooklyn. I was born in Coney Island Hospital in 1963. And then let's fast forward to when I was about 15 years old, I think it was, that I auditioned for the high school for performing arts, and I got in. And that's when I found an affection for performing on stage. I think, but prior to that, when I was in junior high school, there was an English teacher that I had who taught drama as an elective, and she put on a stage play, and she was very impressed with me and suggested strongly that I prepare 2 contemporary monologues and audition for the high school of performing arts.
Wow.
And so I took her advice and studied, and she had a lot of faith in my ability, and I liked her. She seemed to be really genuine and cared about me, and I think on the faith of that affection she had for me made me believe in things that had I not met her, I may have not have been able to conceive of. And that's it.
My friend, do you enjoy acting? Do you enjoy playing a bad guy? I noticed that movie you were with Steven Seagal, and I heard that Steven Seagal was not nice to anybody on the set.
Well, let's break it up into 2 parts. Your question. Let's start with this idea of the bad guy. I don't assign judgment to the characters that I play. I just see them as human beings who have a conflict they have to deal with, kind of like most people. And so, in that sense, I try to authenticate the humanity of the character. And so, in that sense, it's not some kind of fabrication or caricature. It's a real human being, and in that sense. So I just think it's probably gives you more room as a creator to explore the psychic elements, or the psychology behind what makes people tick and why they do what they do. And if you enter that space, that room, that that you peel onion, so to speak, the layers of character development, just look at it that way, it can be very rewarding and fascinating, the discovery that you witness as you bring these characters to life and bring them off the page into 3-dimensional happening. And in that sense, I mean, I feel like it's just it's a liberating state of consciousness, whether whatever pole you want to, stand on, whether it's this idea of the negative pole, the positive pole. It's still just exploring the human condition. And I think in that sense, it can be very useful to viewers to watch maybe an example of what not to do in one's life. If the characters that I play from the point of view of an audience are extreme, then maybe it becomes a learning device for people, a teaching lesson as to if you go down this road, then this is what can happen. So in that sense, I feel this idea of righteousness, or the aspect of characters that are supposed to preserve the balance, the Archangel Michaels of the world, to hold the scales of balance in one hand, the sword in the other, and keep the beast at bay. I provide them with an opportunity to do their job, in the sense of, because the shadow needs the substance and the substance needs the shadow. You can't have one with the other without the other. The whole universe is constructed in that duality, light and darkness. So they kind of need each other to function as a cosmic theater. So that's I look at more in a kind of a metaphysical way than just kind of limiting it to this idea of bad or good. I think it's much more profound than that. And
Wow.
then you brought up Steven Seagal. Let me see. Steven Seagal. I remember meeting Steven Seagal at an audition.
Mm-hmm.
I auditioned for him and his director, and he was very kind to me. And he complimented me during the audition. And he was auditioning actors for a film called Hard to Kill.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the role, and
Yes.
showed up on set. We had a lot of fun filming the sequence. I met his wife at the time, Kelly LeBrock. She was very polite and kind to me.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed about both of them was how engaging they were toward me. They were not. Sometimes I've been on sets where people, because you got to remember, back in those days, tattoos were not popular. They weren't trendy or cool. So when you show up on the set covered in tattoos the way I was, sometimes the Hollywood types, the celebrities, would kind of look at you funny. You'd get treated not so well sometimes. And what I noticed about Stephen and Kelly, it didn't phase them at all. In fact, she was curious about the ink and started asking me questions about where I had gotten some of the tattoos, and Stephen was curious too. And we just talked about it, and they were very friendly and non-judgmental. And then he brought up he got into another conversation with me about a movie he was going to produce, and about some guys from Brooklyn that pull a heist or do something.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought, you'd be great for this, and I want you to be in my next film. And a year later, I got a phone call from management that Steven Seagal wanted to meet with me, and I met with him and his director, and I got the job. So he kept his word. And while we were making that film, Out for Justice, the title of that film, starring William Forsythe and some others, that, um, we had a good time. He was like I was going through a turbulent time in my life personally, and he became like this big brother or surrogate father for a minute. He was concerned about me and he said, you're going to have a great career, and but I'm concerned about some of the people that are around you, and if you need any help or advice. He was very forthcoming, and being able to read me in a way that most people couldn't. It was almost as if he could recognize an aspect of himself in me and pointed it out, but in a way that wasn't judgmental, just like, hey man, I don't want to see you ruin your life. And so he was really, for me, my experience is very positive with him.
What's a psychological disadvantage where you have to play a bad guy, especially one that has to kill the good character? Is it because you fit the part, you look the part, or because you just actually got the part because you were a good actor?
I don't think it has anything to do with me, honestly. I think it has to do with the people who write the stuff and the way they project onto others certain fantasies, mythologies, how they read people, how they define human beings. I think it has everything to do with them and nothing to do with me. I don't take it personal. I just do the work.
It's very interesting, Robert. Now I'm trying to think of all those tattoos you have. Do you remember the very first tattoo that you got, and whether
Hmm.
these tattoos tell a story of where you've been, what you're doing? Uh, what, for one thing, the first question is, what was the first tattoo and why did you decide
Hmm.
to cover your entire body with tattoos?
First tattoo. I think, let's see, Chris, I think I was 17 years old.
Wow.
And keep in mind, too, that tattooing was illegal back in those days in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And there were, people, basically tattooing out of their bedrooms and their, their basements and stuff like that. It's just kind of nefarious, spooky world dungeon you had to go down into, and it was kind of scary looking guys hanging around. But once you got to know them, you realized they were just troubled human beings. But if you gave them a chance, and they showed very quickly there was loyalty and a kind of a respect that I really appreciated, and a no bullshit kind of attitude, especially in those days. So I don't know. There's something about the camaraderie of that commitment to something permanent. Clearly, the
Mm-hmm.
tattoo doesn't come off. That I admired. I think that might have been the motivation for me to also want to get tattooed, because most of my life I had felt I watched so many things disappear, and all this fragmentation. This notion of family was kind of foreign to me, because I watched all that kind of break apart, and I was losing things at every turn, every step I took, as a child up into my teen years. And so I don't know, I felt this was something that couldn't be taken away. There's a I what most people are afraid of the permanence. I actually, I mean, as permanent as it can be. It only lasts until the body drops. Not permanent. The body dies, and it's not forever. It's only as long as you live. But still, it was more than anything prior promised, because, like I said, everything that I saw or became attached to disappeared or was taken away. So I figured, well, this is mine, and it speaks to that, this sense of commitment to something. And also, too, I think because the world didn't make much sense to me. I don't think it still doesn't. I don't think so. I think I found a brotherhood with other men who felt the same way. And
Mm.
I guess we were the outlaws of that time, because, like I said, tattooing wasn't popular in those days. So to
No.
tattoo yourself was a real statement, man. It was like, you know what? I'm not participating in this groupthink philosophy. I'm going to declare myself outlaw, and I'm going to really walk the talk. Once you did that, there was no turning back. And to me, there was something very romantic about that.
Yeah. So, Robert, how far are you going to go? Are you going to cover your face and your head as well? Are you just have you stopped
No,
where you are?
I started when I was 17. I went into the military for 4 years. I traveled the world. I collected a lot of ink overseas. By the time I was 22, when I got out, was discharged, I had my upper torso was pretty, heavily. A lot of the real estate was covered up, and and I had some tattoos on. I had to have some tattoos on my legs. But the extent of it was mostly the upper torso, the front portion of my body, and spotty tattoos on the back, and clearly my arms, had full sleeves. Um, and then I decided to tattoo my neck. I think it was 1990, maybe I did that. And then over the years, it's been more about restoration rather than, you know, how many can I collect, or going to the fullest aspect of the extreme that you just mentioned, the face and the head and all that. It was
Hmm.
just about revisiting some of the older work, because over time it starts to fade out, and there's breaks in the lines and stuff. And so I met some very gifted tattoos in California, in Southern California, that looked at my ink and were fascinated, and they wanted to reconstruct, like a house that gets old over time. You want to go in there and
Hmm.
basically do a remodel the thing. And so they basically reconstructed and reinvigorated this tapestry of this poem that I had basically documented of my life's journey. And I thought that was beautiful, to watch it come back to life, and even and go beyond what the original artist had conceived. Some of these tattoo artists were so gifted, the newer ones had taken old artwork and made it look better than when it was in its original form.
Respect, my friend. Wow, that's you're very deep. You're very, very real. It's incredible. I've been following your career for years, and I'm like, that is a that is a great man, and thinking that, but and I thought, but all he plays are bad people, gang members. Like, is that a stereotype, or is that something like we're going to hire LaSardo for this part because he's a good actor, not because, oh, let's see, the script says that we need a bad guy that is a gang member and has tattoos. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, my thoughts on that, Chris, is that maybe we should ask them, the people who do the hiring. Because I think there's this misconception that people in my position choose. We don't. We are offered a job and either take it and you work or you don't. You know, so it's just I think the that question should be directed at the people who construct this
Mm-hmm.
fantasy, this mythos. Why do they feel the need to, despite things that they read on me, when I meet them at auditions or have had meetings with directors and we've had, these comprehensive conversations or, dialogues that go pretty deep, because some of these directors are pretty intelligent, insightful men, mostly work with men. And for whatever reason, like I said, you'd have to ask them. They make the decision to, um, offer a particular role that they feel I'm suited for. So you'd have to ask them that question. I don't know why they don't want to explore other aspects of my ability. Some have, but unfortunately, it seems well, not unfortunately, it seems the emphasis though is on what you described. But there has been instances where they've allowed me to do things that what people would call against type. You know what I mean? Where there's a sympathetic character, a father, a character that's a little bit more intelligent, or someone who's on the other side of the fence in terms of the law. I did a film years ago with Heather Locklear and Stephen Ray called Double Tap, and the director was a very kind of, he was very broad-minded, and he wanted me to play an FBI agent, an undercover FBI agent, because he thought the tattoos were great as a way to infiltrate the underworld and to portray this idea of criminal, but yet he's working with he's an FBI agent. And so
Wow.
there have been some along the journey who saw opportunities to go in a different direction. So I guess it all depends on who's doing the hiring. Like I said, it has really nothing to do with me. They project their ideas and their perception is a reflection of their mind, not mine. And so I just, and I want to work. I need a job. And so, like I said, I don't judge the characters. I don't have a problem with it. I just do the work, and I
Yes,
try to have fun with it.
yes, that's really respectful. I know about some people, especially teenagers, like they can't get a job because they have neck tattoos that go up to their chin.
Mm.
And then, what do you think of the dragon lady? Like, she had her like 98% of her body completely, and then she gets like eyes made, and then her tongue looks like a snake, and she gets horns built in her
Excuse me.
forehead. Like, do you think that's taking it a little bit too far?
I don't know who that is with respect to this dragon lady
Dragon lady,
person.
yeah.
I don't know who that is, so I can't speak to that. And I can't speak to people who feel necessary to communicate themselves with the physical body in ways that make sense to them. I can't judge that. I mean, then I'm playing God. It's kind of like asking the question about people who their sexual orientation varies from the conventional construct that many years ago was considered normal. There's so many what some people consider aberrated forms of sexual practice. Are they aberrated, or are they just a different choice or perspective? So it's, whether it's a homosexual, heterosexual, transgender. I mean, people are doing things now because they feel instinctively in their being a natural, a natural draw to expression that years ago would be considered an anathema, a curse. But nowadays, it's become something that's not only tolerated, but there are people that champion the glory of being liberated so they can express the full range of what their being entails, whether it's their sexuality, their spiritual views, everything, political views, all that. So I can't really speak to people who alter their physical, whether it's tattoos or their sexual orientation, because once again, then I'm playing God, and I'm not really into judging people. That's not my thing. I'm
Yeah.
all about like live and let live, man. If that makes you happy and you're not hurting anybody, and you feel like Shakespeare says, to thine own self be true. If you're being true to what you feel is your authentic self, and I say right on, man, do your thing.
Yeah, I was let me see if I can find him on here. Okay. So I don't know, you're probably not familiar with Blair White, but she's an American YouTuber. Um but basically she well he um y- used to be a male, and she became transgender, and she looks like a beautiful woman, but she considers herself a biological male, um, female. Um, but it shouldn't prevent you from getting a job, no matter whether your body is covered in tattoos or you're transgender. I think it's just the acting ability. Um, which brings me to this. I'm a really big Ghost Whisperer fan. Jennifer Love Hewitt, definitely. When I noticed that you played Julian Borgia. I don't know if you remember that character,
I do. Yeah.
and you were killed during a I think a heist, a gas station shootout or
No, it was
something,
a motorcycle accident.
motorcycle,
Mhm.
and you went to see your son and your wife, and Melinda had to explain to them that, oh, Julian is here right now, and then your son didn't believe it until he says, "What tattoo does he have on his neck?" And it was a dove.
Mm.
And I said, "That's interesting. Is there a meaning behind the dove?"
Freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah, liberation for the spirit, freedom from all the agonies of a world of limitation and suffering. Let's face it, the world is a pretty confused place, especially now. So, I mean, I think that at the apex of all these images that communicate a variety of
Wow.
feelings and emotions, or spiritual allegory, at the apex is the spirit. What's it say in the Old Testament? There's a saying. It says, like from the snare of my soul is set free, like from the snare of fowlers. So the dove is just the spirit being set free.
Wow. Robert, do you have a faith in God?
Um, I don't get hung up on the labels. I would say that clearly there's a lot more going on here than just the physical reality that people are obsessed with. But I think it'd be maybe pretty cool to talk about the show since you brought that up.
Well, I'm a Christian myself, and I do believe that Jesus Christ is the only way to God, but I digress. I was very interested in that part, Julian,
Yeah.
and how you interacted with Jennifer Love Hewitt. Now, what was the actual relationship like outside of the camera and outside of that episode? How did you guys interconnect and react to each other when the camera wasn't on you? Because I know with the camera on the actor, the actress, you're a totally different person.
Um, well, I'm gonna give you let's back up a little bit. The agents that represented me at that time, they didn't want me to do the show.
Ooh,
They had their sights on another show that I think after the third episode got canceled, right? They weren't convinced that the producers of The Ghost Whisperer would honor the contract that they presented. They were skittish about the business. And I said, you know what?
what? Wow.
I met them. I got a good feeling from them. I did the first episode. and they promised me the second time around that there'd be some renegotiations of the contract that made more sense to management, the agency. They felt I deserved, whatever I deserved, money, billing, etc. And so they were concerned that the production company, the producers, would not honor the agreement. I said, listen, I appreciate that you feel that way, but at the end of the day, last time I looked, I make the decisions, so I want to do this show. And I said, we can do the other show, but if you're asking me to pick and choose one or the other, it's not going to happen like that. The characters that they wrote for me, I don't know if you guys have even taken time to read this, because a lot of times agents, they don't even read it. Some do, some don't. Depends on how committed they are to helping you develop a career. I didn't get the sense that they were really invested in the material. They were more invested in the politic play of, what was going on with the producers. Then they were concerned about how this could help communicate a perception of this idea of Robert LaSardo that might show some vulnerability, a different experience, on television for me. And I saw that, and the producers made it clear this is a story of redemption and reclamation. Because you being a Christian, I'm sure, can relate to this idea of reclamation for the soul when you live a life that has been challenged or corrupted by what people perceive to be evil. So I saw a great opportunity here to communicate as a lesson to people in the audience and even to myself, to explore that aspect of being that we all face as human beings, the inner conflict, and to come to terms with forgiveness, mercy, all that. And so the agents may not have cared about any of that, but I did. And so, long story short, I took the job. And let's fast forward to Jennifer Love Hewitt. I met her when we were on set together. We talked briefly. She was very approachable and friendly, and we did some rehearsals. And I think it was during the scene where when I had the monologue, and I explained to her as the ghost the history of my life, the bank robbery, that I killed somebody innocent, all of that. And we rehearsed it, and I had really went out of my way to memorize that entire monologue. I didn't even have the script in my hand. I knew it here and here.
Wow.
And when she saw how committed I was in the rehearsal, I saw her getting teary-eyed during the rehearsal, man. And I walked away, and she came over to me when I was kind of in my space, just preparing for the actual take. And she said, oh my God, she was very affected by it. And she was very kind, and she complimented me. She said some really sweet things to me. So we got along wonderfully.
Amazing. Wow. I'll tell you, you're a very deep person, my friend. But I don't understand why they don't want you to do the show. Like even today, Hollywood and other movies are so corrupt sometimes. And as soon as you mention God, they have all these things entering their mind, like I don't want anything to do with them. And a lot of atheists in Hollywood are too. And also, someone I know actually started talking about God to Brad Pitt when he was on there as an extra, and got him fired because Brad Pitt, for some reason, didn't want anything to do with the name of God. So that was now recently he has, but now I'm like, well, you're gonna apologize to the one you got fired now, and it's like, but but if it's because they don't want you to ghost whisperer because of the spiritual aspect, well, do they know that you actually did an episode of Touched by an Angel with a character by the name of Lionel? You
Yeah.
worked with Roma Downey, who I met, by the way, Roma Downey, and it's it's incredible. So, what did you think of that interaction with Roma Downey?
Well, let me speak to your other point before I answer that.
Okay.
If you're searching for ministry of logic as to why there was an issue with Ghost Whisperer and there wasn't with Touch It by an Angel, good luck. There is no ministry of logic. They go on a whim. And I think some of them, not everyone, some people are motivated by greed.
Mm.
And if agents themselves are not creative entities, that the extent of their creativity is their ability to navigate and capture a deal, then I think they get off on that. And if they feel the deal doesn't make sense,
Mhm.
then they tend to negate it and try to talk actors out of their own reason. And they can sabotage your career that way. I've experienced that for years. I had agents almost ruin my career because of the mishandling of
Hmm.
things and destroying relationships with producers because they just were incompetent. Um, okay, so your other question, I don't remember the show that well. I remember going to Salt Lake City filming Touched by an Angel, but the actress, I remember. Um, Give me a second. She was married to Eddie Van Halen.
Valerie Bertinelli.
Yeah, I remember my experience with her, meeting her. I was excited to meet with her because I was a fan.
She played Angel Gloria. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. That was great. She was sweet. So I remember that experience. And I remember just having a good time on the show. And I watched it and I liked the episode. It was gut wrenching. It was very teary. Brought, at the end of the show, it kind of made you want to cry. It was very emotional, that episode.
Yeah.
Because you
Um.
never know, Chris, you never know how these things are going to turn out. You just do your best, you put your best foot forward, and you hope, that it's something that has some profundity or it's watchable or entertaining. But that episode was really effective. It was very well done.
Yeah. My
I thought,
father and I would watch Touched by an Angel, and we cry almost every episode. Just the
yeah,
writing was amazing.
yeah, good stuff.
But but when you play Julian on Ghost Whisperer, there's that part at the very end when you asked when your son, the actor that played your son, um, when he says nothing he can do, or the wife said there's nothing you can do, and he said, "Yes, I want you to go back to the man that I killed, to his family," you know, and they don't tell you whether he did or not, but it just ends where you you told him that yes, you that's something you can do. Go back to the one, to the man that I killed. You remember that part? Now I'm going to ask you about this. I talked to many actors and many actresses about this one particular emotion, and they give me a whole bunch of different answers, and I want to know what your take is on it. How do you cry?
It varies. You may have the good fortune at times to be filming a movie or a show when something in your personal life is happening that runs tandem with the work. So it's not a far reach. And so you have access to that emotional field. It's right there. You just grab it.
So, as Lionel, sorry, not as Lionel, as Julian, um, how did so you did you think of something sad, or was that glycerin they put in your eyes, or was it just suddenly like that was a sad moment and you just was that a real cry?
Um, well, I remember what was going on at that time in my life. Um, I remember being on General Hospital. I was on that daytime soap opera for a while. I remember also coming off the heels of Nip Tuck. I remember achieving a lot and then also feeling the sense of disconnect because the achievements did not deliver what I had imagined. And rather than feeling that I had arrived someplace, I felt more disconnected in the sense of being nowhere than ever before. I realized that the success did not bring me a better class of friend, it brought me a better class of enemy, or this idea of envy, people envying. And it did not, this idea of a community of thespians that kind of huddle together and there's camaraderie is a fallacy. I didn't see any evidence of that. So I was very sad to realize that I was making money, doing well, and from the outside observation, I appeared to be successful and at the apex of my career at that time, and I did not feel happy. I felt betrayed.
Mm.
And it was my own doing in a way too, because I had made something an idol. I had believed in the studios and all that stuff. And a lot of people I think do this. They make it God and you realize it's not. And people don't love you. It's a business like anything else. And as I realized all these things, I fell into this despair and a sense of loneliness. And so it was very easy for me to step into that show at that time and conjure this sense of these feelings of frustration, of torment, of the absence of love. And so when I communicated to Jennifer Love Hewitt's character, she came when like I said, she had come back and said to me, "Wow, that was amazing." I said, "Well, I'm not acting." I told her that I'm not acting. She said, "Well, either way, it's really effective." And I was just digging. I didn't have to dig that much. I just, reached in with what was there at that time in my life.
Wow.
Because it was easy.
Wow. That's so inspirational. Wow. I see there's a lot of different characters. You've been on TV for so long, since 1989 China Beach. You were in the X Files. You were in VIP. I remember that show.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Pamela Sue Anderson, right? I remember
Yeah.
that show.
Yeah.
And the X Files, the Amazing Malini as well. Wow.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
it's
That was
it,
fun. Yeah, that was a fun show.
it's incredible. Now, CSI Miami, you played Memo
Hmm.
Fioro for 5 seasons. David Caruso now. Was he a Racial Kane off camera as well, or was he just as soon as the camera goes on and they say action, he's Horatio Kane? Like, what was his character and what was his personality like off camera?
Well, I had a history with David. One of my first films, a film called China Girl, is when I first met David, and then I did another film called King of New York that
Mm,
David was in, and then we did NYPD Blue together. We did this episode where we were like really deep in the trenches with the work, and I got to be very familiar with David's approach to the craft, his personality. I just got the sense that he liked me, and I liked him, and we worked well together. And I remember doing some shows after that he was on, and I would just run into him, and we'd talk, we'd say hello, we'd have brief conversations, but he was always respectful and kind to me because I think he remembered me from all the other stuff that we had done. And for whatever reason, who knows why, people sometimes take a liking to you. Maybe you see a piece of yourself in that person. I felt I could relate to him. He's very kind of a private, introspective man who could tell had a lot on his mind. And I think that frightened people, especially on CSI Miami, because I remember we had when we were working on the show together, David and I in between scenes were talking about stuff because we were talking about movies that we like. We talk about a film that we both love. We have its common denominator of films, and this one particular film came up, Apocalypse Now. We're talking
hmm.
about the fundamentals of that film, and this idea of Heart of Darkness and what that entails and stuff. And so we would just have these deep conversations. And I remember one of the producers coming over to me and goes like, "He talks to you." I go, "Yeah." Wow. I'm like, "What's the big deal?" Well, he doesn't talk to us, and the producers on the show, I think the sense I got was that they were intimidated by him and they were tiptoeing around him. And then here I am, I come in and they don't understand why he's so comfortable with me and I'm so comfortable with him. And he doesn't, basically, like, I guess maybe he was very guarded or with certain people wouldn't open up or communicate. He'd go to his trail and wouldn't engage anybody about it, and stuff like that. But he wasn't like that with me. In fact, I remember when we filmed in Miami for I think it was the pilot or the first time I was on the show, the first couple episodes I did, I said to David, "Listen, man, they I was invited to the daytime Emmys, for this
Hmm.
for General Hospital, right?" And I said, "Is there a way that you talk to the producers and get me on a flight sooner so I don't miss?" He says, "Rob, let me see what I can do." And he set it up that I could fly out so I wouldn't miss the Emmys. So
Wow.
he did things for me and was very kind creatively, and also it was like going to acting school with David because he would take the writing sometimes and make it his own. The writers weren't always crazy about it, but he would rewrite scenes. He would challenge the writer, say, "What are we really saying in this scene?" And at times he would just on the fly make stuff up, and you'd go along with it. So I felt I wasn't just I felt privileged to get acting lessons from him that I felt raised the level of those scenes that we're in together because everybody complimented how well we worked together and the chemistry that was so vital in the way the frequency that we manifest on the screen together. And
Wow.
on top of that, I'm getting an acting class, I'm getting paid, and having a good time and working with somebody that I like. So every time I would see David, it was like a reunion for me. Uh, so that was my experience with David. I have nothing but good things to say about that man. Like other than, my only regret is that just I miss him. That's all.
Yeah, I watched all 9 seasons. He is on Miami, and he was my favorite character, favorite actor. And I saw him in
Yeah.
Jade. I saw a lot of his movies, NYPD Blue. I think I'm glad he ended up leaving NYPD Blue because CSI Miami was the perfect job for him. And are
Yeah,
you
he was
kidding,
great on
Robert?
that.
I would definitely take the David Caruso masterclass anytime. Definitely.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, General Hospital, Manny Ruiz, 28 episodes. Wow. Um, what do you prefer, films or TV?
I prefer any kind of situation that allows me some wiggle room, some dexterity, to play. No one, I think, in their right mind wants to be locked up in a box, so to speak, creatively. So anything that offers me character development, regardless of like what side of the pole it stands up, negative, positive, good or bad, I don't care. As long as there's depth there and the writing is intelligent
Mm-hmm.
and is layered, then I have an opportunity to really dive deep into the subtext of the writing and bring about a character that has three dimensions and sometimes four, and that's, I think, fascinating to watch when performers, actors, go that deep that people can connect to that person or be repelled, like, ooh,
Yeah.
that's scary, whatever the reaction is, as long as it's realistic and there's, like I said, there's intelligence there, man, I'm good.
Yeah. Um, you were talking earlier about disconnect. I know what that's like being disconnected for people. I know there's a friend that I reached out when I found out that his mother died, and I loved his mother too. And it just wasn't the same because there were like so many years in between. Like we were really close back in the 80s and 90s. And then when I reconnected with him, it just wasn't the same. It's sort of like God saying you have a certain amount of people that I'm going to give you in your life. They're there for a certain reason and then they're gone. So don't go chasing after them. And when you chase after them, it's not the same. It's our friendship is not the same as it was. And another friend I had for 35 years is all because of one little thing I told him last summer, that our relationship went from a deep, close relationship to an acquaintance relationship. And we were friends for 35 years. And talking about disconnect, there are people out there who are deep, like really deep. And I like to become deep too, but suddenly it's sort of like, well, you did something and I was too sensitive, and I did something and our relationship is not the same. So I missed that. But now I've
Yeah.
changed. Now it's like whenever I have a really, really strong connection with somebody, I want to keep that relationship. Besides David, with the strong connection that you had with David Caruso, was there any other actor, actress that you know, or even a writer or whatever that you had a relationship with that got you the job, that got you the acting position, that got you something that no other would have gotten like David did? Or was it just David Caruso, the only one that you can remember?
No, I have quite a few fond memories. I mean, I worked with iconic comedian actor Richard Pryor. That was the genesis of my career. I
Wow.
did a Warner Brothers film, a comedy, where I met, the best of the best, and he was very kind to me and invited me to his house to watch the Sugar Ray Hagler fight. So
Oh
I was
man.
I learned right off the bat that sometimes the bigger they are doesn't necessarily mean that they
Mhm.
have this huge hedge of vanity around them. Some of them are very humble people, and Richard was extremely charitable to me. Um, and I've met people over the years. Steven Seagal was one of them,
Mhm.
who were loyal to me and kind. Um, and Stephen Bochco, his series, NYPD Blue, that
Mhm.
that company was very had a lot of faith in my ability. I returned several episodes of NYPD Blue, different characters, and I was on some of the other, some of these spin-off shows that they did, Philly, um, Murder One. They were all, I think, Bochco's productions, and so for a period of time in television there, I was, I felt I had had a home. So they were very kind to me. And
Amazing.
Ryan Murphy, creator of Nip Tuck, he took an affection to me clearly with the role that he hired me for, Escobar Gallardo. on that show.
Hmm.
And it brought me back when everyone thought it was done. I was done because they seemingly killed off the character, made it impossible for him to return. Ryan, did the impossible. He created a door, out of thin air and had me walk right through it, come back. So that was great. So I was great. I'm grateful for that. And if I'm fast forward into the present, there's quite a few independent filmmakers that I feel have an affection for. My friend Josh Weber, who just completed his film called Isaac, a psychological thriller starring R.J. Mitty and Dove Cameron. I have a supporting role in that. He's a good friend and a great filmmaker. And Michael Mahal, Sunny Mahal, the Mahal Empire. They are
Mm.
putting out movies left and right, and they've hired me 7 times to play an assortment of characters that are
Wow.
not what you would call typecasting. I played a cowboy riding a horse. I played a superhero vampire, with a cape. I've played a general in a zombie apocalypse. Were not in. They did not allow what people perceive as the physical appearance being a problem. They didn't see it as a problem. They saw it as an opportunity, which is beautiful.
Yeah. I'm thinking about Criminal Minds and your character Luca. Now, when you're given a script, Robert, how do you tear that script apart to make sure that character that you're reading for, you become that character? And what is the dangers of you being, as you call it, well, you just take that character home with you and you become that character before you realize, wait a minute, that was only a movie.
First part of the question about um, character analysis, I guess is the best way to describe it. That's what I learned from Stanislavski method. You just, you figure out what the primary intention of the character is, what's the driving force, what makes the character tick. You read the material over and over and over again. It becomes your Bible, and it
Mm-hmm.
starts to resonate. If it's well written, you just dig deep, and even if it's not well written, you can add your own spice to it, your own qualities, and make it your own, and dig deep into the language and the subtext, and figure out things that maybe the writer didn't even conceive of that make it a much more effective incarnation performance. So it's up to you to use your imagination to breathe life into these characters. And so that's what you do. That's what I was taught in school, how to do all that. The other aspect of your question, the peril of diving too deep into the abyss of character
Yeah.
development. I don't know. I think it's just one of those things that kind of comes with the territory, man. It's like if you're going to go to war and you want to fight in a war and be a combat vet, you're a combat vet, or you've got to deal with somebody shooting at you.
Mm-hmm.
And so as long as it's kind of like this, people think war is hell, and it is, right? Maybe it is hell on earth. But certain men, certain type of breed of men elect for principles and love for country and go to fight for a belief. People have been doing this forever. And they're willing to sacrifice and martyr their hearts for a belief that they feel makes sense to them. And sometimes even the ones that don't necessarily identify with a belief have maybe another reason for going to war. Who knows? It's as intricate as every individual on the planet, man. But for me, I guess it's just about recognizing wherever I'm going to go, heaven, hell, or somewhere in between in my work, character, circumstance, or whatever, to make sure that when I go there, I don't bring any judgment with me. There's no judgment, because that's what Brando said in Apocalypse Now, as Colonel Curtis says, it's judgment that defeats us. So you must make a friend of horror. Horror and moral terror are your friends. If they are not, they are enemies to be feared, truly enemies. So you have to embrace it, man. You embrace the stuff and you put your arms around the devil, so to speak, for the sake of the work and for the entertainment aspect. Now, the question is, well, how do you deal with the disc? How do you process out of that and go home and live a normal life? I don't know any artist that was a normal life,
Mm-hmm.
a conventional life. Most artists, I feel, live in this kind of, I don't know, borderland, border world. They're not necessarily, the true artist doesn't live in the conventional matrix.
Wow.
And you don't want to get too far out into artistry and become a lunatic either. But I think most artists realize that they've been given by the creator an opportunity to create things, and they do it. And they're true to that. And if it becomes, you get to a point where you recognize that it's affecting your mental health and your
Mm-hmm.
physical health, then maybe you go see a therapist, you talk to somebody, or you talk to your rabbi, your priest, your life coach, your guru, whomever, to help you create a state of equanimity so you don't get lost too much on the left, lean too
Mm-hmm.
much to the left, or too much, you don't become a goody two shoes, and you don't become a a a monster.
Mm-hmm.
You find balance between the two extremes, I think, anyway. And so that's what, I think for me, it's just been stuff like hiking, being in nature, um, being around positive people, bringing it to the earth, to the natural order of things that don't involve narcissism or vanity or, look at me, reflection in the mirror, focusing on the aspects of life that have no pretense in their rawest form. You see nature, you see a deer on the road, you see squirrels and chipmunks, you see hawks flying above your head, you feel the
Yeah.
wind on your face. You
Mm-hmm.
embrace the spirit of creation as a way to anchor yourself in reality so that the spell of the imaginary world, the hallucination of fantasy, does not become the dominant. You find a way to balance out that aspect of by checking with reality. If you stay in it too long, yeah, I think people can potentially have maybe psychological problems or confusion about identity. But that's why I think it's important to find hobbies and things to do that keep you physical, rooted in the earth. Whether I go to the beach a lot. I put
Mm-hmm.
my feet in the sand. I watch the ocean. I watch all
Wow.
these miracles happening constantly. That's available to anyone. It's just a question on whether people want to give attention to it or not. Heaven is here right now. It's not like it left.
But
If
Robert, I
man, wants to superimpose a nightmare against it, then that's what mankind will do. They'll keep recreating this idea of problematic circumstance because of any number of issues. But if you really take a close look at the way the universe functions and how it was made, it's beautiful. Look at the tapestry of the sky, these pastel colors, these sunrises and sunsets, man. It's just visual poetry, cosmic spectacle, man.
but Robert,
But
that's all God's creation. That's God created the universe. He created that ocean. He created the sky. He created the water. All this beautiful nature. That's God. And I like how you say that you go out there and you look at the ocean, you look at the sky and everything. I do the same thing. I love it. Like we have a beach. I go down.
yeah,
Um, and in talking about that, I noticed that you spent 4 years in the U.S. Navy, but for 2 of those years, you handled Navy attack dogs in the Aleutian Islands. Tell me what that was like.
it was very challenging and at times glamorous and also disheartening. Um, but overall, I would say it was probably the most glamorous aspect of my military career. The
Wow.
dog, King was the dog's name. I had a fond affection for that animal, and we went through a lot together. And they flew us. They put King in a cage. Talk about check luggage, man. They literally put him in. I was, I elected, volunteered when I was in the Aleutian Islands for security force, and they wanted to know, once they got a sense of me, and they wanted to know, would you be interested in the canine program? We'll fly you to Lackland Air Force Base in Texas with this dog, and it's a tremendous responsibility, Robert, because this dog has been, it's a military, you know, basically military property. It's worth a lot. The dog's worth more than you, basically, as they were telling me. So we're going to fly you in the kennel on a plane from way up in the Aleutians, down to Alaska, and then all the way to Texas. You think you can handle that? Times going to dog school, and you need to get close to the dog. So even before I got on the plane, I spent weeks developing a relationship with that animal and becoming friendly with him and building what they call a rapport. So that when we got to school to get certified, we just breezed right through the course. He made me look good because he was such an efficient, amazing animal. So that part was probably the aspect of the military career where I felt that had some substance to it. I wasn't just a cog in a wheel. I felt that my job had some meaning and purpose, and I guess I took some pride in it. Felt good about it, even though I didn't have a lot of friends, because when you're a police officer and you're part of narcotics interdiction team and arresting people for drug contraband, you're not going to have a lot of friends, let's face it. And so I got to see quickly how I was in a circle of agreement with the police department, and how everybody else looked at us as the enemy, and then we had to look at them a certain way. So there was no fraternizing. There was a very distinct line in the sand, especially on that listening post duty base, because it was in the middle of nowhere and a lot of people were suffering from isolation. It was dark most of the year. There was, people suicides. There was a lot of depression because we were in the middle of the Bering Sea and the weather was atrocious. The winds were so powerful. You'd have to go. They built an intricate network of tunnels underneath the base that you could walk through when the whiteouts would occur, because you couldn't even drive a truck on the road. It was too dangerous.
Wow.
So it was a very challenging duty post during the winter for the obvious reasons. And so I think there was a lot of alcoholism, a lot of military men, the Marines that were up there, the Navy, the Ski-Bees. Some of the Air Force guys, they were, felt like probably they were in prison. We all were, in a way. But there was also something very, morbidly romantic about it. It was a beautiful place with once the snow melted in the summer, there's all these tundra weeds and mountains and stuff. And the island had a history from World War II of being a place where they held Japanese prisoners during World War II. So there was all these unexploded ordnance there. You had to be careful where you walk because there were bombs that hadn't blown up that could detonate, mines still in the ground, and so you were only allowed to go in certain places. So there was something very adventurous about Adak. The island was called Adak. There's something very adventurous about that place, and spooky and haunted.
During a conversation, I'm thinking, so it's a Navy attack dogs. Am I saying those are bull mastiffs or are they German shepherds?
Mine was a combination of German Shepherd and Doberman. He was a crossbreed.
Did King ever try to turn on you, or did he respect you?
Never. He was always obedient and a very well-behaved and trained dog. He was the
Wow,
perfect animal.
it's amazing. Wow. So yeah, you're talking earlier about Escobar Gallardo. So, what was it like to be on Nip Tuck? But what was it like working with him? Can you give
Oh,
me what's his name? Julian something. Sorry, I
it's
should
okay.
remember.
Um, he was very nice and kind and personable. I got along with both of the actors there, and there wasn't a lot of ego, just the desire to do the work right, do it properly, and we had fun doing it together. There was a chemistry there, and I think Ryan's presence, Ryan Murphy, also created an atmosphere of fun for people because it was so exploratory and new, and the writing was so cutting edge that we were, I guess, all excited to kind of
Mhm.
partake in this adventure. So there's a lot of a good time.
Yeah, I still can't. I still can't get out of my mind that you were with attack dogs, and I'm thinking. So, what do you think was your favorite place? Africa, Australia, the Philippines, or Saudi Arabia? Out of those, what do you think was your favorite place?
That's a tough one. I liked the Orient. I liked Fiji. I liked Indonesia. I did like the Philippines. I felt in those those ports, the people were much more, I don't know, accepting
Mm-hmm.
and friendly. Some of the ports people were not so friendly. but I've had affection for the Orient. I felt comfortable there. I felt at home there, like I'd been there in another life or something. I kept flashing when I was in the Philippines in Subic Bay. I was like, I'd been here before. Wait a minute, I was looking around. I was just having a lot of like bizarre deja vu moments
Mm-hmm.
when I was, in those places.
I know about those moments, Robert. I know familiar with a lot about deja vu, and um, but I love how, like, it says here you're a fan of Burt Lancaster. Now I
Mhm.
love Burt Lancaster. I watched all his movies.
Did
James
you read his
Craig.
Did you read his book?
I haven't read his book yet. No.
Read his book, called. The title of the book is called "Enough About Me." Enough About Me. Read it. If you're really a
Burt Lancaster.
Reynolds fan, you say Burt Reynolds or Burt
Burt
Lancaster?
Lancaster.
Oh, okay. I got my wires crossed, but still read that book. Yeah, Burt Lancaster, huge fan as well. Yeah, two Burts.
So
Burt
Burt
Reynolds,
Reynolds wrote a book I should
Burt
read.
Reynolds, and Burt Lancaster. Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
fan of both. Yeah.
And James Cagney and Edward G. Robinson and
Yes.
Lana Turner and Rita
Yes.
Hayworth.
Yes.
They say that
Yep.
that what do you notice of Rita Hayworth?
Yeah.
Or,
Gilda. You see the film Gilda, the classic.
so I'm going to say that they go to sleep with Gilda and wake up with me. That's what she said. It was
It's a
one of her
great line.
quotes.
It's a great line.
Now, you mentioned that movie saved your life. Now, I noticed that you were placed in a foster home for a period of time as a young child. You mentioned that. How did that make you feel? Is that probably carved out and made the genesis of Robert LaSardo that we know now? Do you think that experience in the foster home made you the type of person you are?
I don't know if it made me, into the person that I am. Things that I did not remember. Because I experienced this stuff in late time. It wasn't like I experienced it in the moment. A lot of the stuff I didn't remember. That I mean, I probably do like a hypnosis digression with a psychiatrist. I might be able to open those doors, but I had found out later on certain things, and that it helped me understand certain tendencies that at times it makes sense. I didn't always understand the psychic life, the emotional feels, some of the knee-jerk tendencies, all the stuff. I didn't understand any of it until later on, and then it made sense when I put all the pieces together, because there was so much fragmentation and lying by omission, things that were left out of the story that people didn't tell me. So I think finding some of these missing chapters were crucial in the book, so I could understand this idea of personality and what made this guy tick, and why, like I said, there's a proclivity, a tendency to react a certain way to people and situations.
I love this conversation, my friend. This conversation is raw. Two men trying to open up to each other, being deep and all respect. It's amazing. You were talking about mental health earlier. How did the pandemic affect your mental health?
Um, Not much, honestly. I I worked more during the pandemic than I did after. I mean, I'm still
Really?
been busy, thank God, but yeah, I got on a plane to go to Las Vegas in the midst of the pandemic, and there was nobody on the plane, just a few people. I loved it. I got all this room on the plane. The airports weren't crowded, and and then of course it got to a point where they shut all the production down. So there was a brief stint there where there was no work, but then some of the more um, courageous productions in Florida or other places didn't really care about that. And they said, "Hey, you want to come to Florida and be in my movie?" I'm like, "Sure." So I got on the plane, and I just kept jumping from job to job as much as the law would allow me. As long as the airports were open, the planes were flying, and people who were producing movies were willing to take those risks, I was more than happy to accommodate them.
Wow. Well, wasn't there a chance, was say that you had to be stuck at home? Like, don't you have any interest outside of movies or?
Not really, other than
But
hiking and going to the beach and meditating and I live a very simple life. I don't need a lot of stimulation. I love watching films. I'm a film historian. I like old movies. I don't read as much lately, but I used to read all the time, different comparative study of religion and spiritual works. I've read poetry by Charles Bukowski. I've read an assortment of things that, as that way to kind of, I wouldn't say kill time, but to learn, to have experiences, to come into awareness, to see what other minds have figured out, on the planet in this journey called life. So no, I mean, I didn't feel like I was captured in the circumstance at all. I never felt that way during the pandemic. I guess I got lucky in that sense.
Do you listen to music at all?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I listen to all sorts of music, a
Like
plethora of.
classical opera?
Yeah, Vivaldi, Antonio Vivaldi,
Wow.
Wagner,
Mhm.
Beethoven, all that stuff. I appreciate classics, and I also like classic rock. I appreciate gospel music,
Mhm.
Blind Willie Johnson, or old blues. I mean, the old stuff from like the 20s and 30s. Robert Johnson.
Oh,
I
yeah.
also like Southern Fried Rock, the Allman Brothers, Grateful
Wow.
Dead, the '60s, all the music from the '60s. I'm a big fan of. I feel like I was born in the '60s, but I feel a great affection for a lot of those bands like Jefferson Airplane, the Mamas and the Papas, the Moody Blues. I can
Yeah.
go on and on. But so
Wow.
yeah,
That's a
and
quite a
and I grew up. Yeah,
eclectic taste there.
yeah, and I grew up with the traditional like poetry rap, like stuff like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, the origins of that experience, that music that was designed to bring black people out of the darkness and bring them into the light, rather than, some of the stuff that later on I felt was more exploitive and not as insightful. But I remember when the music had this profundity in the lyrics because these men were poets and they were, using the music to warn people about, what would happen, if you turn away from the light, so to speak, or just they were communicating that there was just a right way to live, and not to be tempted by certain things that were very easy, seemingly easy ways to make money or to duck out of responsibilities, and how that would,
Yeah.
that was just a trick. And so I think the music back in those days was extremely helpful to people who were able to hear it to guide them away from the ruination of their lives. And I think the artists of that time, the rappers of that time, saw that they had a responsibility to people to communicate the peril of a life of crime, or of
Yeah.
not, owning up to your responsibilities as a human, and not drifting into a subhuman kind of frequency that was destructive. And
Yeah, the 60s were one of those was one of the like I was born in the 60s, and it's one of those eras where I remember watching Sesame Street, and suddenly they showed an image of the lunar landing, and Neil Armstrong was saying it's a small step for man, giant step for mankind, giant leap for mankind. And I was standing there and I said, Mom, what's this? I want Ernie and Bert back. And then I realized that it was because it was during the moon landing, and they suddenly wanted to, advertise it. And there
yeah,
were no iPhones, there was no computers, and if they did have a computer, it filled the room because Babbage was the one that came up with the first computer, and it added two, one plus one is two, and it filled the whole room. And look, now we have iPhones. And did you know? I don't know if you're familiar, but the iPhone or the Android, whatever, um, it's the same sort of machinery that was in the Eagle too. I don't know what you think about.
I'm not really big on technics, so I'm neither not a for or against. I just don't know much about technics. I utilize the tools because I need to function in the world, but I don't do too much investigation with it.
So did you enjoy working with Clint Eastwood and The Mule?
Yeah, it was a dream come true. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I'd be playing opposite of him and that he would be so open and giving as an artist to allow me room to improvise and play jazz in the scene, because we did some stuff together in some of those sequences that wasn't on the page written. I just decided to make up some things, and he just went right with me, and it worked, and he kept it.
Wow.
And so it was a wonderful, humbling experience. It's also very frightening at first, the night before, knowing that you're going to have to be on set playing opposite of him. A little scary, but then it's like anything. You jump into the pool, it's cold, you start swimming around a bit, and things you warm up a bit, and you're like, hey, this is wonderful. It's
Yeah,
great.
93 years old, and he's still, probably still doing that. Probably still working out. I know this 104-year-old, she works out in the gym, and her trainer's 70-year-old man. But 104 years old, and her mind's sharp, still working out, stuff like that. So it's just how you see life, and just going through that's amazing, my friend. Wow. Um, but yeah, Hard to Kill, you were Punk. It's amazing. King of New York. Now that's the one with was that the same one with Christopher Walken, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Now that's my favorite film. The ending, for anybody out there who hasn't seen King of New York with and not only with Robert LaSardo and Christopher Walken, the ending is pristine. One of the best endings to a movie is King of New York. I don't you remember the ending of King of New
I'm
York?
not going to give it away.
No,
So
but
you give
it
it
was
away,
one of
then
the
no
most
one's going to watch it.
I know.
So let them
I
go see it
loved
and
it.
discover it for themselves.
Yeah. And every time I watch a movie, I always look, I wonder what the ending is going to be like. And sometimes I'm like, is that it? Is that all? Or something. I'm like, yes. It's like drop the mic moment. It's
Mm.
incredible. And the eclectic amount of movies you've been in, gang related, DEA. Oh, wow. That's right. You played a good guy this time. DEA agent Sarkisian. When you have to do a character where you're handling a gun, do you have people on the gun range teach you how to use one?
No, because I was in the military and I was familiar with weapons long before I stepped on the stage of Hollywood, so to speak.
Is that the
I was
reason
no
why
fa-
they hired you as the character because you were in the military?
I would like to believe that they hired me because I went to the High School for Performing Arts and spent many years um, cultivating the craft and being effective in it, so that when I went on countless auditions over many, many years, that they saw an ability that was more than just my physicality. They saw that I could actually act. So I would like to believe that that's the scenario. That's why. But you talk to five different people, they have five different opinions. But I'm not really interested in people's opinions.
Was there ever a time that you just wanted to give up, like just walk off the set?
No. When you step onto the battlefield, man, you got to follow through. You got to go all the way. You can't half step it. You got to commit fully. It doesn't matter what's happening around you. Keep
Wow,
going.
it's
I
so
mean, I do.
inspirational.
I do.
Yeah, you just
Yeah.
changed my life tonight. Just some of the things that come out, you're just so deep. So that's amazing, man. Wow. Talking about movies saving your life, I think conversation with Robert LaSardo saved my life tonight. It's like amazing, man. This is this pure joy to talk to you. And I know that the movie Waterworld with Kevin Costner, that was a trashy movie. That was really a bad movie. I like the actual scenes where they show you the city under the water. That's what I want to see. I love apocalyptic movies, and that Waterworld. I mean, people say they didn't like Waterworld, and at the I don't know if people have seen Waterworld, but the ending was interesting as well. But when Kevin Costner's character and everyone they all went underwater, you saw the cities and you realized the extent of the end of the world where the polar ice caps melted and you see these cities underwater. That was one of the fearful things of that movie. It might have been a bad movie, but seeing a scene like that really frightens you, thinking that anything could happen right now. But like you mentioned about construction that's happening across the street from where you live, like this
It's done.
construction.
Yeah, it's
Oh, is
done.
it?
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have it for the next 3-4 months, and during the day you could just get like jackhammers and everything.
Mm,
Now it's quiet and you
that's
hear
good.
like crickets and you'll hear like dogs. That's what I consider great. But
Mm,
Monday to Friday, you get the noise, and I'm like, "Oh, how do I work? And I don't like noise. So you got to everyone look down below. check out his part of those movie clips down there. His and then there's a movie that you actually um, you're starring in. It's called.
I like to bring your attention to something, if I may interrupt. Forgive me, because you said you professed yourself to be. Are you a Christian?
Yes, sir. I am.
Okay,
I've been a believer since February 1984.
okay. That being said, I think you might find this particular movie worth a watch. It's called Hope for the Holidays. It's a Christmas movie, and it's a story of reclamation. I don't want to give too much away, but
Hmm.
a man who is concerned about his mother who's dying from cancer, that she cannot afford the medicine necessary to save her life, robs a bank and ends up in jail. And then he meets me, a former combat vet who got into some trouble, and we form this unlikely alliance. And I help him cope with the time that he has to do in prison. And
Mm.
ultimately, we're both released on a. We're both. He receives a compassionate release, and I fulfill my my commitment of time, and we both get out so that
Hmm.
we can visit his mother. His wish is to see his mother on before she passes away. So I think it's a very spirited, faith-based, clearly faith-based, and um, movie that really speaks to the heart of the matter. So if you might find it a little bit a bit of a departure than how you've observed my career. When you see this, you'll see that there are people that have made movies that I've been a part of that have a different perception than some of the others that you've mentioned.
So it's called Hope for the Holidays.
Hope for the Holidays. It stars Sally Kirkland and an assortment of others.
Sally
Doug Hut,
Kirkland.
yeah. Mhm.
This is an old movie, isn't it? Because I don't think Sally Kirkland
Well,
actually.
I don't know. I don't know what you consider old. I mean, I think the movie's probably about 3 or 4 years old. It came out a
Okay.
few years ago. I don't know. To me, that's not an old movie. To me, is like 1940s. That's an old film. But no, this came out within the last few years. This came out, I think, a little bit after, maybe a year after The Mule came out. So maybe 3 years ago. So it's not that old, relatively speaking. It's available, I think, on Prime Video and also on Hulu, I think.
Yes, that's why. That's what Sally Kirkland. Yeah, this is when
Yeah,
she
yeah.
was quite elderly in her life. Oh, there you go. Robert LaSardo, Mouse Sanchez.
Hmm.
Okay, don't give it all away, but I'll watch this one. But I noticed that Todd Bridges is in this one.
Yeah,
Dr. Ward. I'll have to check it out.
yeah. Nice man.
Everyone, hope for the holidays. Yes, definitely. Yeah, I actually I've subscribed to a Christian movie called it's not a it's sort of like Netflix, but it's a Christian version. It's called Pure Flix, and I
Yeah,
watch.
Hope for the Holidays is on that as well. It's
Okay,
on Pure Flip. Yeah.
I'll probably watch it on Sunday because every Sunday I watch a Christian movie from Pure Flix.
Hmm.
And I saw a good one. If you get a chance on Pure Flix, is one called now this is called Dead Man Rising. It's not Dead Man Walking. We know that one with Sean Penn. It's Dead Man Rising. It's
Okay, I'll
actually
keep
a
an eye.
very, very good movie. And I'll tell you one thing, sometimes Christian movies kind of bless me. Others are like, well, you know what? I'm going to turn this off because it doesn't really do anything for me. Robert, do you watch your own movies? Your own stuff in there?
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I have an affection for certain films because I can tell when we're making the film that it's something, the material, the actors I work with had a good experience. And so I usually can tell when we're making it that it's something I'm going to be curious about to see how it manifests in the marketplace. And then there are other movies that just don't feel. I always do the best I can with the material that they give me, but sometimes the subject matter, it's maybe too violent, it's too torturous, it's too bloody, it's too explicit. I don't really like to watch movies that are explicitly violent. um it's not my thing. So I may kind of not participate in stuff, viewing stuff like that. I don't watch things like that. I'll support the film, I'll promote it, but some things, like I said, I don't connect with.
Robert, this was one of the best conversations I've had. This is amazing. Um, I'm not even going to edit anything from here. I'm just going to post it the way it is because I think it's beautiful stuff, man. And we all
Well,
need to just to respect each other and just be there for one another and don't just. And I love your attitude. I really love your attitude, and it really changed my perspective on things. Like this is crazy. Everyone, it looks like Mr. LaSardo is losing his light
let me
because
change.
LA. I think is like 8:30 there, and I think now.
I can
So
change. I can change that. There we go. How's that?
okay,
Yeah.
alrighty then. So um, if
You
there's
could
a
you could have mentioned that earlier. I could have turned it on. So you might have to cut out half the interview now. I could have just fixed that for you with a button. But hey, welcome to film. Welcome to filmmaking.
talk about losing light, I guess not. Well, yeah, I'm just gonna keep that in because it'd be kind of odd when you're just suddenly editing and you see the person be dark and then suddenly boom. Hey, how did that happen? Talk
Hey,
about being a magician.
hey, you
um
never know. You might get a laugh.
if someone walks up to you and said, Miss Luzardo, I want to do what you're doing, and who's the tattoo artist so I can go and get my first tattoo and then be an actor? No. Basically, if someone came up to you and said, Mr. Lasarda, I want to do what you do, what kind of advice would you give them?
I'd say go to school and learn the craft. It's like, if you want to build a house and learn and become a master craftsman and be a carpenter, you've got to learn how to build a house. You can't just fake it. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
can, but you don't want to. Would you want to live in a house like that? So I would say if anybody comes to me and curious about the art form, I'm going to ask them a couple of questions. One of the question is, why do you want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a love affair for the art form? Have you been on stage? Do you read plays? Have you watched films? Have you gone to class? Are you willing to sacrifice your whole life for this? Because it's all or nothing. You can't like become a weekend warrior, man. You got to put
Mm-hmm.
both feet together and jump off the cliff and just basically dedicate your whole life to it and be willing to sacrifice everything. But if there's something else that you want to do, then I would say go do that. But if this has to be something that in your life is the only thing that makes sense and everything else doesn't, if you feel that way about it, then your own inclination will drive you into places to become a student of that so you can master it. So I don't think I have to tell anybody too much who really truly is motivated by the art form itself. I mean, I can answer some questions about the industry, some of the technical aspects of it, or maybe just some a couple of pointers here and there. But when you really have a desire for something, and nothing's going to stop you, people, what is you can move mountains, right, with a belief, with the spirit of belief, right? Doesn't it communicate that in the Bible, more or less?
Mm.
So the spirit, if the spirit is willing, man, and the commitment is there, and it's not a vanity affair, it's just simply a dedication and commitment to the work itself, then everything else I think will just fall into place.
Okay, so you asked me that question about if I was a Christian and told me about hope for the holidays. I'm going to ask you this. Might as well just give you full barrels in this question. Um, I know you said you don't have an aversion to God. You're not an atheist, but what is your reason for maybe not reading the Bible and
I
understanding
have read
that?
the Bible. I've read the Bible
Okay.
multiple times. I've also read the Apocrypha, the books that were taken out of the Bible. I've read a lot of it, and I've read a lot of different spiritual works that I felt were useful to me. So I never said I didn't.
Okay. So when Jesus says that I am the way, the truth, and the life, no man comes to the Father but through me, what's your reaction to that? What Jesus said?
My reaction is no reaction. The truth is the truth. The truth doesn't need belief. The truth is,
Wow.
the truth doesn't need a proclamation. There's a lot of people that profess faith and on Sunday or several days through the week, and
Hmm.
then fall into a practice that is anything but what the faith commands.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the Holy Crusade, Spanish Inquisitions, if you look at the Catholics that burned the Protestants at the stake because they considered the Protestants of the heretic belief, I mean, there's been a lot of fragmentation in terms of in regards to the body of the church. You know, the Reformation, the papacy, the Eastern Orthodox, the Church of Paul, the evangelical aspect of the teachings of Paul. There's a lot of different points of view
Wow.
on the faith. So I rather not concern myself with the politics and just, you know, allow the truth to be what it is, man. I don't need to label it. I don't need to carry a sword or a shirt, profess anything. It's like that saying by Lao Tzu, those who know don't say, those who say don't know. You know, this idea, you know, the people who communicate God, 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 they use this word God as a term to describe something that's infinite and unknowable, but is there clearly, because I didn't make myself. Um, and I didn't make any of this. I'm here manifesting, reflecting something greater than all of us. And I think being able to be humble in the face of that and surrender one's ego to that is about as close you can get to holy union there is. You don't need to, it says in the Bible, seek me not in the inner rooms, not in the outer rooms. I'm not there. This idea that you have to find a zip code, a place, a club, and label it, I don't know. I mean, for some people that works, and I'm not knocking. I'm just saying, man, like the kingdom of heaven, this idea of the kingdom of heaven, paradise, love, mercy, which is the heart of the law, is available to everyone. It's not
Wow.
exclusionary, man. The
Mm-hmm.
whole human race, I think, might need some love and affection and take a course in mercy and love for brother and sister. Love one another is also another commandment. Love one another. I think that's about as basic and general as you can get. Just love one another, you know. And I think these are the things that have to really be looked at rather than evaluating and judging, putting things into categories, you know, so that you right away you're taught this idea of the other group and they're wrong, or we're the right, we have the right belief, and everybody else, you know, good luck with that, and I'll pray for you. There's a lot of judgment in that, and I think even biblically speaking, you know, judge not, you know, with what you know, with what, you know what I mean. You got to be careful with that. You know, judge not, lest, you know, with judgment you judge, shall you be judged. So I don't know if we're called to evaluate and judge or to confess as much as we are called to act. Love is an action. Charity is an action. So you can talk all day and night about your faith and God and come up with all kinds of names. You can quote the Bible backwards and forwards, or, you know, the Quran, the Torah. You go on and on. Jesus said, you know, you stand in front of the temple, you don't go in, nor do you let anybody else in, you know. So I would say that there are people nowadays that still do that. They stand in front of whatever holy place and don't let anybody in. They have this authority kind of sense of themselves and build a tremendous hedge under the guise of this idea of God. And I wonder sometimes if is it really about God or is it about them? I think the relationship to divinity requires something beyond what the words of man can speak. It's a practice. Every day you have to embrace charity. Every day you have to realize there's a right way to live and be kind to each other. In the worst case scenario, you have to still try to do the good and not be arrogant and look to self gratification. You have to surrender self ultimately, because at the end of your days, that's what's required. You have to surrender to what people consider death, which to me is just really the transition into the vibrational frequency of divinity. And for those who are afraid of that, then they're going to contract and they're going to be afraid of death. And for those who recognize it's just a doorway into the experience with something that has always been eternal, that's present right now, not later, not the Jacob's ladder, well, you have to ascend and then it happens. No, it's available right now. As the book says, the kingdom of heaven is within you right now, not later, right now. So I don't know. I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's just a way to live, a way to be. Less talk and more doing. I think if people consider that aspect of things, maybe the world would change in an instant or very quickly if people really practiced what they preach.
Don't you think this world could be a better place if everyone, all 8 billion, whoever, how many people are in the world, even the Bushmen, those that people that we don't even know exist, don't you think the world would be a better place if they all embrace God and they all embrace spirituality and just went with it? Because we got a lot of atheists out there. We got a lot of people who hate God. We got a lot of people out there to think that, you know, the Big Bang happened. We even got people who don't care.
But I
What are,
think it's
what are
I
your
think it's
feelings on
I
that?
think it's my feeling is it's important to have mercy and to understand that people are entitled to their feelings. They have every right to feel what they feel. They have, you don't know someone's story. You don't know what they've been through. People have been abused in the name of whatever. So you got to
Hmm.
be careful with this because only God, this idea you talk about God, right? So if you want to invoke the name God and utilize as a way to communicate a fundamental, then the Bible, I think, even says this: God knows the heart of man. So I don't know if it's for us to decide who is appropriately placed or who is mentally right because they don't necessarily agree with a particular doctrine or a particular fundamental. Um, I think it's dangerous when you do that. I think it's important just to be tolerant, loving, and accept that people are not always going to agree with you. And they have reasons for that. And your job, according to the law, is to love them regardless. The law requires that you love one another, not judge. That's not your job. The job is to love, to tolerate, and be merciful and do the good work. Everything else is up for grabs. Otherwise, you deem yourself Lord. You make yourself a God. And that to me borderlines on a form of spiritual fascism. You got to watch out for that sort of thing. Because people have been killed for that. People decide that, okay, this is the right way, and they kill a bunch of people. Got to be careful with this sort of thing. It's a very slippery slope. I think everyone, as long as they're not hurting other people, whatever state of evolution they are in their spiritual practice, should be allowed that stage. You can't force people. You got to let them come into realization on their own, however they feel is appropriate for them, whatever medicine makes sense to them. When you start declaring yourself the ultimate pharmacist, this is the medicine, you have to take this and everything. You're starting, I don't know. Not everybody responds well to the authority principle, you know, especially when men have seen evidence that other men have betrayed and not walked the talk. You see a lot of evidence of people who proclaim faith one minute and then the next minute are indicating in behavior that they're not living it. And so I can understand why people are skeptical and people turn to science and they turn to other aspects of the creation as a way to feel safe because they tried to embrace a religious life. They tried to embrace a spiritual practice and they were hurt in the process by other people who did not understand what they were even talking about. Maybe they thought they heard a voice, they thought God was talking or somebody was talking to them, and declared themselves an authority and abused other people in the name of. You got to be careful of this in the name of phenomenon. I don't know how useful that is because if it was useful, the world would not be in the state that it's in, would it? How can everybody be right when so many people are in turmoil, man? Is everybody right? Or can we all agree that something is clearly wrong here and we're a species in a totality? The body of man is an entire species. We all need oxygen to breathe. We all need water. There's some basic fundamentals that ties the whole species together. And maybe it's more important to recognize that than it is to separate off, and to be sensitive to that. And why it's in the state that it's in is anybody's guess. I mean, you can go to the Cain and Abel philosophy that this, the archetype of Cain led a certain tribe of the world to, basically, contaminate and build kingdoms, temporary kingdoms on earth, and then Abel has suffered forever to try to create the balance and all this. You can go to that. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's, I think, way beyond man's comprehension to know why. I think it's man's job to work to heal rather than work to use the mind to figure out. I think it's important to open the heart and to sacrifice. This is, if anything, every ant knows, every housefly knows, every squirrel, every animal, every fish, every creature that's been created knows that this is an infinite realm of sacrifice. Everybody is sacrificed here for one reason or another. Whether it's the crucifixion or the fish that ends up on your plate who's beat over the head so someone can have a nice dinner. That fish, whether it's aware of it or not, is a sacrifice. You're breathing in and out right now, and your body is basically at war with microscopic organisms that are trying to attack your body, and there's other aspects of your being that are protecting, and there's all kinds of things that are coming into life, being and then being destroyed. So I mean, you can get hung up on the physics of all that, or you can just recognize it's a temporary place that we come to, and while you're here, just try to not make a mess, and be kind, and be charitable, and love one another, man. It's pretty basic, yet it seems to be a very difficult thing to do.
I want to believe that God set this communication between you and I up. Like, I didn't hear him audibly, whatever, but I feel that God wanted us to have this communication because you're not only a blessing, but that's a little bit, I can go with that, just to believe, yeah, merciful, be good, just love people, and
I
walk the talk, not talk the walk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not. I can't exclude a whole. It's arrogant and grandiose for me to sit in a position to think that I can make some broad stroke statement about humanity, man. I'm not. I don't have the authority to speak to anything like that.
I
I just,
understand.
I just don't. I don't have the authority to comment on that. I just know some basic fundamentals about just a right. We all know in our hearts. Anyone who I think is sane, more or less, knows that there's a right way to live, and you can feel it in your gut, and you can feel it in your heart. And I'm not going to condemn all of humanity or my brothers and sisters of various faiths and tell them that they're wrong. It doesn't make any sense. That's just judgment again. And it's very tricky to fall into the trappings of judgment under the guise of this idea of the higher power giving you the office to do that. You do not have the right to judge anyone, man. In my opinion, you're called to love and forgive and have mercy and be charitable and to do the good work. That's your job. Anything else, to me, it reeks of pride, man. It reeks of, I know something you don't know. We're better than you are, and we're going to help you. And if you don't, then we feel sorry for you. That's arrogance, man.
I know
And
pride goes before
last
destruction.
time I heard, arrogance is synonymous with evil.
Yep. Pride goeth before destruction, haughty spirit before fall. I totally agree with you, Robert.
Yeah.
No true words have ever been spoken. Wow. I know for a fact that God set this up. And this will make me not only a better Christian, but a better able to, deal with people in a different way. You were talking about, yes, fish, and then they become sort of like a sacrifice. It brought to mind my friend who's a staunch vegan. What's your thoughts on veganism, and how do I deal with it now?
With sensitivity and understanding and maybe some questions. Hey, maybe you might discover that it's something useful for yourself. Maybe, it's an opportunity for you to be healthier. I don't know. Everybody's body chemistry is different. For people who want to be vegan, there's the opportunity to be vegan. Maybe there's something going on with their physiological, makeup that
Hmm.
if they eat something that's more conventional, they get sick. and they maybe feel better when they eat that way, So it just, it depends on, I mean, everybody's got, you know, we have a lot of things in common, but body, if you talk to the doctor, scientists, and all the people that are experts in the field, some people a lot of people allergic to stuff, right? So, and the world is becoming it's become a very homogenized, processed, artificial world. So we're not eating whole foods. So a lot of the illnesses, I dare say, are a result of practices of diet and ways of living that are making people sick, and relying on chemical compositions to stall the illness rather than overcome it and transcend it. So I think people that have the resource and intelligence and insight to realize that they can cure themselves by the way that they eat are very smart. Quality of life.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There's something else you don't know about me. So over the years, I've gained quite a lot of weight. I had a lot of salt in my diet. I had a lot of sugar, crap, whatever. And then I had this medical emergency in December where my blood pressure was almost like 200. And so I went, and I thought I was having a heart attack at one point. So I had to Uber myself emergency because, ambulances take too long. Uber was here in 2 minutes. Ambulance would take in 15. I don't know. I don't understand that part. I won't judge. Okay. But, and anyway, I changed my diet. And Robert, I lost 34 pounds and keto.
Yeah.
So I can't really eat the same things and do the same things I've done before. But yeah, I went from almost 230 down to 188 pounds in almost 4 or 5 months. I'm pretty happy about that.
Bravo.
Yeah.
No, I'm proud of you. That's quite
I
a
love
commitment.
it.
Yeah.
It
That's
is commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I respect the discipline that you embraced to do that.
But if I can discipline myself to do that, then I can discipline myself to do anything, like get back into art, get back, like I'm a filmmaker as well. Podcast, I just started like in October 2021, and I love it so much. I'm already in like 127 episodes. I love it. And this is going to be it. This is like I love it. I love this. Okay, I want to be humble about it. I really appreciate this conversation. Wow, you're a learned man. You're actually very humble. I really appreciate you, Robert. I think you're better than me, and I think you're actually pretty awesome. I love your work, and I got to know the real person, and I love it. And I can wonder why David Caruso wants to hang around you. Like, amazing, beautiful.
Birds of a feather.
But this is very wonderful. Okay, Robert, thank you very much for being on the podcast. And everyone, Robert LaSardo, excellent actor. Really appreciate his work. We're going to end the stream, everyone. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much for the conversation.
Okay, bye.
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Escobar Gallardo, Celia's boyfriend.
Sure you're not hungry, guys? My girlfriend, she loves the hot shit restaurants in town, but I prefer it here. Nothing beats a fruity tooty.
He's your personal taster?
With power comes envy. With envy comes assassination.
Maybe if you laid off the cocaine, you wouldn't be so paranoid.
Mira, bro. Old school. Now, don't you miss the 80s, man? That tit you're holding is worth $250,000.
What do you want?
What's mine? Pepe, fetch the tits. One. Lovely house. That's delicious. What is that? That's organic. Tell Sean that I stopped by and I met his beautiful family. Bye, Pumpkin.
We checked around town. Your colleagues all turned Silvio down. But you repeatedly mentioned by your colleagues as someone lacking ethics. Someone who would take a child molester on as a client. Silvio stole that money. He stole my daughter's innocence. You can understand my lack of patience.
Why?
Kill them then.
Who did you kill?
Someone innocent.
I don't really scare that way, you know, the whole in-your-face staring thing.
Can't kill me. You can burn me, you can shoot me, but you can't kill me!
You got a wife, Memo.
At home. In Nicaragua.
Then you understand my position.
Yeah, I think you showed me that. You and that other cop. Why are you here?
I'm here to give you a warning, Memo.
A warning. Mira. A mala noche. I'm untouchable.
Untouchable, just like your dead friends at the Biscayne house?
Somebody killed them all today, except Riaz.
I may be able to help keep you alive in here.